Okay, this is just a recap, reminder of how to figure out Roman numerals, how to perform Roman numeral analysis on a chord progression. We did it already with individual chords, but now we're going to be looking at just a single longer progression. So it's more chords, but it's only one key that you have to worry about at a time. So that would be the first step. If we look at our steps for figuring out Roman numerals, establish the key. That is the most important first step because the Roman numerals don't mean anything without context. So when we're talking about a 4 chord or a 2 chord or a 6 chord, that only means something if we've established what key we're in the first place. So that's our first step. You can go ahead and tell me what key we're in. You're a genius. We're in B flat. So the next step, once we've established what key we're in, and right now we're just assuming everything's in a major key. We haven't discussed minor keys. We'll get there very shortly. Step 2 would be to figure out the root of each chord. So some of you might be in different places with this. Eventually, when I get to the point where you don't have to go through steps, I always make the analogy of sounding out words. So eventually, when you see a jumble of notes, your brain will pretty quickly or almost automatically unscramble them, and you'll know what the root of the chord is. But until that point, you may need to reference or write out this little chart here. So let's look back at this example. So I'm going to just go ahead and plug in the notes. You don't have to do this if you don't need to, but that's a B. Technically, it's a B flat. That's another B flat. That's an F. And that's a D. So we've got B flats, Fs, and Ds. I'm going to look at my little chart here. Bs, Fs, and Ds. Bs, Fs, and Ds. Oh, looks like that they all fit into this column, so I know that the root is B, or in this case, B flat. So that means that this chord is counting from B flat to B flat, which is the third step, counting from the key to the root to determine the Roman numeral. So if I count from B flat to B flat, it's a 1 chord. Don't overthink that. Let's do another chord. So again, we've already established the key. We don't need to do that again. So let's just identify the notes. We've got C, we've got an A, we've got F, and we've got C. So looking at our chart and looking through, looks like the only column in which all 3 of those notes fit is the FAC column. So the root of that chord is F. So now I'm going to count from B flat to F. Well, I can just do that right here on the staff if I want to. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I went all the way up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So from B flat, B, C, D, E, F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is definitely a 5 chord. That is set in stone. I figured out the root, and assuming I'm right, that's not going to change. So this is definitely a 5 chord. Now, the second question I want to ask myself, which I didn't ask at the first one, I sort of took it for granted. This is a B flat chord, and B flat is the lowest note, or otherwise known as the bass note. In this example, we determined that this was an F chord, but F is not the lowest note. The lowest note is actually C. So going back here, I am looking at the F chord. The C is my bass note, and the C in an F chord is the 5th of the chord. So I'm in an F chord, C was the lowest note. That means that the 5th is the lowest note. When the 5th is the lowest note, that means we are in second inversion. When the 5th is the lowest note, we are in second inversion, which means I'm going to write this little 6, 4. It's not very little. I suppose I can be. Do I want to? Nope, size. Let's go to 8. That looks kind of like right what it should look like. So this is an F chord in the key of B flat. That's where we got the 5. But the 5th of the chord, the C, is the lowest note. So that's how I know to write this little 6, 4 next to it. So this next chord would be a 5, 6, 4. Let's try one more. Let's identify some notes. We've got a D, got B flat, got F, and another B flat. Let's see, I'm gonna go to my little graph here. Oh, looks like BDF chord. So, if I'm in B flat, and that's a B flat chord, then non-negotiable, this is going to be a 1 chord, because B flat is the root. Now, B flat is not the lowest pitch. D is the lowest pitch. So again, looking at the chart, which hopefully you eventually commit to memory if you haven't already, we notice that the lowest note in this case is actually the D, the third of the chord. When the third of the chord is the lowest note, I'm going to write a superscript, a little, again, sorry it's not so little, but I'm going to write a little 6. We talked about that and learned about where those little numbers come from. Those are intervals above the bass note. So in this case, it's right here in the tenor, the second voice from the bottom, sorry. That's where we have that 6th. It's telling us, and if you remember, there's actually an invisible 3 under here that we just kind of omit for lack of clutter, and that would be from the D to the F. Now this is more than a third, it's actually an octave and a third, but we call that the note a third above D is F. So it's okay that it's not this F. There's an F up here, and that's fulfilling the same third. But again, this single 6 is just a shorthand. That means it's in first inversion, which means the third of the chord is in the bass. Sorry if I am over-explaining, I just want to make sure. Let's do this one more chord here, and then I'll leave you to it. So we've got an E flat, we've got a B flat, we've got a G, and another B flat. Going back to our chart, we see that that is, this is the only column that all those notes fit into, the EGB column. So I know that E flat is the root of the chord, so I'm counting from B flat to E flat, B, C, D, E. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know that this is a 4 chord. So far we're dealing only in major chords. You'll notice the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord. Those are the only major chords in a major key. And we talked about the reason behind that is the same reason that the whole steps and half steps remain constant throughout major keys, no matter what the tonic note is. The qualities of the chords that we build on top of those notes is also going to stay the same. So this major 1, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, and then diminished 7 are all going to be constant within each key unless we change a pitch, unless we alter something. If we don't alter something, remember, we call that diatonic. If all the notes are diatonic, they fit within the key, and all this is going to remain constant. So, this is an E flat chord, which is where we get our 4. What is the lowest pitch? Hey look, it's an E flat, which means it's in root position. So if we wanted to be uber thorough, we could write a little 5 and a 3 here, describing specifically that there's a 5th, which would give us this B flat, and a 3rd, which would give us a G, which happens to be up here in the treble clef, and that tells me what notes are in the chord. But we don't do that because it's just a lot to look at. So we just leave it alone, we delete that, we remember that it's there, but we don't actually write it. So this would just be a 4 chord, and because there's nothing else written next to it, we assume it's in root position, which it is. So far we've got a 1, a 5, 6, 4, which would be a 5 chord, an F chord, and second inversion. The 5th of the chord is in the bass, F-A-C, followed by a 1, 6, which is the B flat chord. It's got the D in the bass, the third of the chord is the lowest note. And then it's followed by a 4 chord, E flat, G, B flat. It's in root position because E flat is the lowest note. Just to reiterate, the bass note and the root note do not have to be the same note, just as in this chord and in this chord. So do not get stuck thinking that the bass note is how to figure out the Roman numeral. The root of the chord is what determines the Roman numeral, and that may or may not be the lowest pitch. Alright, hopefully this was helpful. When you do it on the Google form, feel free to use the Google Doc that I created, so you can print that out if you want and write on it, and then just enter the answers in the Google form. If you don't feel like you need to do this step of writing in all the pitches, then you might not need to print that out or even look at it. You can just look at the Google form and answer the questions. Whatever works best for you.